All right, thank you for tuning in to the Agency of Influence. Today, I wanted to go over my experience when I was down at the University of Pittsburgh at the Michael Knowles protest. There was this big protest there that almost escalated into a riot, and I want to discuss essentially what happened there, which was a pro LGBT, anti Michael Knowles protest. So I want to go over that whole situation as well as the whole LGBT movement as far as what legislation is looking like right now, and as far as how culture is surrounding that right now in the country as well as on the international level. Now, if you have not seen my videos already on YouTube as well as Rumble from the protest, I recommend going and seeing it just so you know what all that went down. Things got pretty crazy. Before I even got there, a smoke bomb was thrown, and that was even before the Michael Knowles lecture, rather the debate went on. But when I was there, I saw a handful of crazy things. I think the biggest thing I saw, which was also very concerning, was the fact that there was this air in the protest of just anger and frustration and a bunch of insecurity. They didn't really sense much confidence from the protesters. They oftentimes they wore a mask, not so much like in the Tifa or COVID kind of sense, but they wore a mask because they did not want their face being associated with their beliefs. Even though they're kind of out there and standing up for what they believe in, they do not really want to put themselves the full way through and really kind of be like, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I believe in. I think that because much what they believe in is pro-violence, and they don't want to have themselves exposed based off of that. It was also interesting to see that there were a couple of drummers that were at the protest. And keep in mind that the protest was around the building where the Michael Knowles debate was going on. The drummers were there, which were actually kind of interesting. The drummers were pretty good, so it kind of got me in a mood like I was a music festival. Yeah, but they were hammering away on the drums, trying to drown out they would drum, and then the protesters would do their typical chants, and they would just try to drown out what was going on during the debate, so nobody can hear, so nobody can get that message across from the people on stage. Yeah, it was interesting. All the people were during their chants. They seemed to not want people to speak opinions that differed from theirs, and they would call Michael Knowles and all the people that support him fascist for just having an opinion that's not theirs. Then you look at what they believe, which I'll get into later, and it's very extreme. And then their idea of what other people that differ from them, their opinions on what they believe that they think is very hyperbolic. And they believe that if you do not agree with them 100%, you're going to cause death, and you're going to cause death especially among children. And there was this case I saw where there was the local news there, and they had the heavy duty good equipment. They had their camera set up, and these guys dressed up in the whole Antifa black bloc were standing up there. One person was standing directly in front of the cameras, and another person wearing black bloc was holding a black umbrella so he can get a wider span to block more of the camera's view. And he had the umbrella pulled out all the way to block everything, so the cameras could not get good coverage of what was going on. Because like with the mask, they do not want people to know what they believe in, and they can kind of stay under the cloak of darkness to do what they want when people can't see.
Why are you filming my face?
And it was kind of not funny, but kind of just like ironic in a way that when I was filming them, the one person accosted me, gave me the finger, kind of got all tough all over my face. I was like, gave him like the pat down with my hand, like, all right, calm down. Nothing to be concerned here. I'm just filming you. This is a public space. You're protesting, so don't you want me to film you protesting? Don't you want what you believe in spread out to the rest of the world? Isn't that why you're here? So it's just very back and forth. They don't know what they're doing there, essentially. And there is this other guy there who was screaming at the police, the typical anti-cop rhetoric. And this guy, he's a guy with stud earrings. I looked at his eyes, and they were like melting with hatred. It was so unusual. Like, he was so wound up. It was like the sharpness, but they were like melting. Now, it's kind of hard to explain. You just have to see it to know what I mean. It's like a sharp, melting kind of look in his eyes. And he was screaming, like I said, the cops, this typical anti-cop rhetoric. Some that come to mind that I heard were, get a real job. You know, like, they haven't heard that before from people like him who self-entitled brats. He also did the whole, oh, you're going to go home and you're going to beat your wife. It's just everything that's just nonsense, typical like cartoonish, political cartoon of a policeman. This guy was odd. And then I swear I've heard about this before with Antifa and you know, groups like that. They have their own EMT staff with them. They're not like from the state or the city. They're not from like a hospital that are there with the ambulance. There were these people wearing hard hats. And these people, I was talking to one of them and she was being very suspicious over what they did. She didn't want to give me too information. I even showed her my camera. I'm like, hey, I'm not filming. I'm just curious. And she was like, yeah, we're something like that. Yeah, we're just kind of here, EMT, you know, private EMT service. And yeah, it just seemed like it was this like sense of organization that was going on. There was like a handful of them too. There's maybe like a dozen of these, like, apparently they're all licensed according to the person I spoke with. But yeah, it's like this weird organization. In case one of the rioters or protesters would get hurt, they were there to tend to them. And after experiencing this protest, which almost kind of launched into riot, they had riot control going on with the police. I went home and read over a couple of things that I knew beforehand and found some new resources to kind of get my knowledge going, to get me thinking. And I found this one piece of research here. Now it says the U.S. LGBT identification remains steady at 7.2%. So essentially what this is saying here is that more people overall are not LGBT than we've seen before. But then if you scroll down to the numbers here by generation, you'll see that tells a very different story. Now, the silent generation, the oldest people that we have around these days, the total that identify as LGBT is 1.7%. And then as you get younger, the generation starts to go higher. And the one thing that pointed out to me was the Generation Z. These are the people that were born between 1997 and 2004. So they 20% identify as LGBT. 20%. And I mean, there's no way that many people are LGBT. It just seems like it's such a cultural thing right now, where if you want to be cool, if you want to be accepted, you identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender, or the plus, whatever that may mean. Seems very subjective according to what they want you to believe or what they say. I mean, it just shows how much this LGBT stuff is embedded in our culture now, and it's really shaping young people's minds to believe a certain way. And when you hear them talk, it's a lot of it is about how, oh, it's just about, as a whole, the LGBT movement, about the LGBT people. And they oftentimes leave out the part about the kids. And they say that conservatives, Michael Knowles, they're against LGBT. But what they're really against is how they go after children. And they go, oh, we're not going after children. But if you look here, now, Florida LGBTQ group cancels Pride Parade when told it must be adults only. And if you read through this here, the organization, the Pride of the Treasure Coast, Inc. Twitter page, they released a statement saying that essentially, let me get a direct quote for you guys here. The city has decided that with the likelihood that the governor will sign the latest bill into effect this evening, and then with everything with the city officials telling us that it can only be 21 or older, we are obviously upset and disheartened that it has come to this. We also regret to announce that here's the key part here. We also regret to announce that we will have to cancel our plans to bring back our beloved parade. So in other words, they're going to cancel the Pride Parade because it can only be 21 plus. So if we cannot include children in our LGBT Pride Parade, then we are not going to have a parade at all. I mean, it just kind of seems like they're going after the kids a bit with this. It's not so much about acceptance, it's about pushing ideology on children. And I mean, even in public schools, which goes up to public colleges as well. I'll show you another article here. The GOP-led House passes bill to prevent biological men from competing in women's sports. And this was party line vote. The Democrats said one thing, and the Republicans voted for another. And I mean, I'm not going to go through this whole thing right now, but essentially, as the headline says, they're trying to keep men and women in different sports, because whenever men come into women's sports especially, women get injured. There was that thing with the volleyball. The woman got slammed in the face by volleyball. I think she got a serious injury. Then there is, I think, Fallon Fox is their name. In the UFC, woman, well, now a woman is a women's league, but male to woman, it gets confusing. The man to woman fought a woman. The woman did not know that she was fighting a biological man. And that woman got beat pretty bad. So again, it leads to injuries. It's not very fair. Women are largely unable to compete. We saw with Leah Thomas and the women's swimming, she won first place. Then there's been a couple other instances where women break records or they come in first place, and it's just very unfair for the actual women. And with that, with this whole LGBT thing, they put the trans people, and they put their feelings above those of women. Women's feelings are just kind of pushed to the side. They're disregarded. And they're kind of placed into this hierarchy. This victim hierarchy is what it's often called. And it's just getting all topsy-turvy. It's getting just wild. The LGBT movement is not really about acceptance and tolerance. It's largely just about complying with this narrative, which is not based in reality. All right, let's see here. Now, if you look over to, in a legal sense, what the political parties are doing, you'll find that Democrats are really kind of grouped together, and they want to pass LGBT legislation. And this article here shows that lawmakers in 19 states, including Colorado, want legal refuge for trans youth. If you scroll through here, there's this guy here, which you may recognize, Scott Wiener. Look him up. He's an interesting guy. I'm not going to get into it here, but he's a state senator from San Francisco, so in the state of California, who's made some controversial waves recently because he's pretty loose on the whole kid stuff in the adult manner, if you know what I'm saying. He just looks kind of odd there. So this article essentially goes through saying that Democrats are all grouped together. They just want to give trans refuge. They want to essentially make it easier for kids to buy into the whole transgender thing and also potentially become transgender, even against the wishes of their parents. For example, here's a law that was passed in Washington State. If you read through the article here, it says that, of course, it's to protect, keyword there, protect trans youth seeking life-saving care. And this passes the Washington State House. Now, what's that mean? Protect trans youth. Protecting them to do what? Now, if you look at what transgender, that whole transition thing is, it's really either being sterilized, being castrated, or having other healthy sex reproduction organs taken out of your body. It's really crass. I mean, you're getting surgery on healthy bodies, especially on children. You're preventing children who can't make decisions for themselves yet in any other way, so they need adult supervision. You're telling them that they can make these permanent solutions because they're confused about who they are. Every kid at some point in their life is confused about who they are. Especially nowadays with social media, it's more common than ever. And if you have this whole LGBT thing being pushed over to kids on a regular basis, especially if they look out for it, they're going to be very vulnerable to being pushed in that direction. And adults should not be leading the way. They should encourage kids to find out who they are, but they should not be encouraging kids to, sterilize themselves, cut off and cut out parts of their body. That seems like it's not in their best interest. I understand the whole trans thing, it's okay, some adult wants to do that, but you can't be pushing kids in that direction en masse. It just seems so wild to me, just so unethical. And if you look over to this, scroll over screens here, if you look at this California law here, I have a section of this here. This recently passed the, I don't think it's in law right now. It passed either the House or the Senate in California. And I think this may have been a bill that was co-authored or co-sponsored or something along those lines by the guy I just mentioned. Where's this guy at? This guy here. Rightfully named State Senator of California, Democrat Scott Wiener. All right, so here's a snippet of the law. Feel free to look up the whole law yourself. It's very unethical, if I can say so myself. Now it says, the bulletin is from the author. It's for the exaggeration. I'll just read this quickly. A minor who is 12 years of age or older, so below the age of consent, below 12 years, or rather 12 years older, may consent to mental health treatment or counseling on an output basis or to residential shelter services, if both of the following requirements are satisfied. The minor, in the opinion of the attending professional person, is mature enough to participate intelligently in the outpatient services or residential shelter services. Then the next point here. The mental health treatment or counseling of a minor authorized by the section shall include involvement of the minor's parents or guardian unless the professional person who is treating or counseling the minor, after consulting with the minor, determines that the involvement would be inappropriate. All right. So essentially, one thing I forgot to touch on in the Washington bill is that they are allowing children who run away from their family. They're allowing them to stay in these state facilities for runaways. And now the state is not required to contact the parents. So, and that's if the kid is transgender and the parents are not accepting. So in other words, a kid can run away and the state will refuse to tell the family that their kid is alive and well, they're under their custody. So then essentially the parents, the family, the friends are left wondering, where is my kid? Have they been kidnapped? Are they dead? Are they okay? And they just leave the parents just hanging, just thinking, just so much fear, so much worrying that their child is just picked up by somebody that's like as sick, if not sicker than the government themselves. And one thing I'm not sure about the Washington law is, are they allowing kids to make medical decisions on transgender surgery themselves, or are they just housing the kids? And what the California law did was say, I think it's the same thing with the refuge for the runaways. But I think California may be going an extra step, but I think Washington may be the same. California is saying that these children can run away from their family, and then these children, without their parents' consent or even against their parents' wishes, these children can go through these serious transgender surgeries. They can cut out and cut off healthy parts of their body just because of some identification they have that they will, as statistics show, that they will likely grow out of. And like I said before, once these procedures have been issued, once they've been completed, there's no going back. It's a permanent, lifelong thing. It really is tragic. It's very sad. Yeah, another point before I continue about this is, I think the worst thing is not the people that are doing this evil, that are passing this legislation, that are activists for this cause. I think that the people that stand by the one that are doing the most harm. The people that keep voting these people in because, they're liberal, even though they're not liberal. That's just how they market themselves. And they just comply to it all, say it's not that bad, just let people do what they want. I mean, let them, cut open little kids, 12 years old. It just blows my mind that people accept this and tolerate this. Now, Canada, they're a lot like us. In fact, they may have been taking things a step too far for a bit longer than we have. Now, to find the proper article here. Okay, so here it is. So this law passed in Canada, this was a couple years ago, that would allow the Canadian government to remove kids from their parents who reject their transgender ideology. So to rephrase this, even though that's pretty straightforward, if a parent does not want their kid to cut out and cut off healthy parts of their body, the government will come in, remove their child from their parenthood, from the home, put them into a state-authorized facility, and allow the kid to go through transgender surgery against the parents' wishes. I mean, Democrats and liberals always say, we're against authoritarianship. Republicans, conservatives, they're fascists. They support, pushing the views on others. But what they're doing on the other end is breaking up families and then mutilating children. It's crazy. And then another thing here from Canada, another article here. After 2 failed attempts, Canada bans conversion therapy. So then again, it goes against the whole thing where, oh yes, actually it goes in association with the idea that if you do not believe in what we're putting out there, you are hurting people and you are just the worst. I mean, if you can't even talk to somebody who is having a hard time and encourage them to go in a way that goes against the grain of what the liberals, the people on the left agree with, if you go against that grain, that is illegal and you could be fined, locked up, whatever else they want to do to you. I mean, to make it illegal to give somebody encouragement to be themselves, be comfortable with their body. The fact that that's illegal is absolutely nuts. All right, so I have this research here, the survey from YouGov. It's The Economist and a YouGov poll taken between April 8th through the 11th of 2023. So it's very recent from when I'm recording this. All right, so what this is looking at is, do people actually believe that it's okay to allow kids to be transgender? Again, the key word there, kids. And the question they asked was very objective. And they asked, do you support or oppose this statement? Do you support or oppose allowing parents to provide their transgender children or teenagers with puberty-blocking drugs, which can temporarily prevent the effects of puberty that may not align with their gender identity? Now, in total, about in the low 30s, so let's just say 30%, about 30% support this across just everyone, which I think is fairly high, but I mean, it could be higher, but 30% just seems astronomical to me. And if you go by the different brackets here of demographics, you can say, gender do not make a difference. Race do not make a big difference, although I was surprised to see that black people tend to support this at a higher proportion than did whites or Hispanics. And then for age, the younger you are, the more likely you are to support this. And income, if you make more money, you're more likely to be in agreement with you agree that teenagers and children should be allowed to go through puberty blocking and transgender procedures. Then if you look down by ideology, so liberal, moderate, and conservative, about it's 8% support. Then for moderates, 27% support. And then for liberal, it's 40. It's so in the low to mid 60s. So moderates lean more closely to the conservatives than they do the liberals. I mean, over 60% of liberals believe that kids should have life-altering surgeries over a phase. I mean, do they also believe that children should have their arms and legs amputated off their body because they just makes them, they just don't, I just don't want it. I just don't want my arms and legs. I just want to kind of roll around the house, it's because that's what mom wants. That's what dad wants. They want me to have no arms, no legs. I also don't like seeing, so I don't want to see things I don't enjoy. So I'm just going to take my eyes out. I mean, there really is no difference. But of course, because one deals with sex, that makes it a big difference for them. But it's really the same thing. All right. So now you kind of wonder, how is this being portrayed in the media? What do Democrats think about this? I just wanted to point you to an article here to kind of show that the media is back in this. The kids think that it's okay, quoting here, Fox, it's okay to let your transgender kid transition, even if they might change their mind in the future. So it's okay if you want your kid to carve out parts of their body, even if they will be horrified that they did this in the future. and they no longer identify as the gender that biologically and realistically are not. Not going to go over this entire article here, but you can feel free to read it yourself. Of course, it goes over, research that they conflate with actual research. They kind of mess with the numbers, they fudge the numbers. It's just horrifying that this is being accepted. People have been saying for years that it's going to lead this way. And it really is leading this way. And I mean, things are becoming scary and people keep voting for this stuff. And I feel like people oftentimes don't believe it because it seems so unreal. And they keep voting for the people that vote for this stuff, vote for them to be in office anyways. And so I need people to really stand up and object to this. They need to let people know what's going on. I know it's an awkward conversation talking about children being hurt, but if people don't stand up and speak out against this more often, people are going to keep passing these laws and more children are going to be hurt. Not temporarily, but for the rest of their life. Now, Hakeem Jeffries, who is a leading Democrat, who is a rising star in the Democrat Party, maybe the guy in the party now besides Pelosi, at least in the House, because of the bill I mentioned earlier where they're trying to ban men from competing in women's sports and women from competing in male sports. He essentially is pushing this all off to the side, saying that's not a real issue. Republicans are just being hyperbolic. Republicans are just lying. Then he supports the whole transgender thing. He thinks children, essentially, doesn't say it here, but you can kind of get that gist. He says that children should be allowed to do whatever they want. They should be allowed to make their own decisions when it comes to going through these transgender procedures. Let me full screen this here and let you guys watch.
I believe in the fundamental goodness and decency and integrity and respectfulness of the American people. And for me, this is not about politics. This is about being there for all of America's children, including transgender children who just want to be able to live and to belong and to make friends. That's something that all Americans, I believe, all decent, kind-hearted Americans fundamentally support. And the extreme MAGA Republicans are trying to sensationalize an issue that doesn't really exist in the way that they are falsely portraying.
Okay, so, I mean, what's up with the whole extreme MAGA Republicans? Is that really sticking? I keep hearing that from not just Biden, but from other Democrats. I mean, it's not really the extreme MAGA Republicans that are not on his side. Like I showed you the YouGov poll just a few minutes ago. People don't like this. And it's not just about the kids going through this procedure to belong. If they go through this procedure, they're not going to belong. People are going to probably think they're weird. I mean, people cutting off their body parts, most people think that's weird. I mean, for some people, hey, it may help them. It may make them happier. And it seems like the research does show that. But for most people that go through these procedures, it does not make them happier. I mean, they say follow the science, but the science is not on their side here. Now, I mean, they say that men should be allowed to transition into being women, but yet they cannot even define what being a woman is, and they refuse to define what that means. I mean, I know during the Ketanji Brown Jackson, during her Supreme Court nomination process, this clip has been sent around 100 billion times. Everyone has seen this, but I feel like we cannot stop showing it because it's such a seminal moment in our culture. It just says so much. So I'm going to play that clip here where she is asked by Senator Marsha Blackburn the question of our age. What is a woman?
Can you provide a definition for the word woman? Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the meaning
biologist.
of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the
All right.
law and I decide. So I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
And of course, she was, even with her ridiculous response, she was put onto the most powerful court in the entire country. And we also have here the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, who, in discussing Title IX, which is essentially the civil rights for women, the women's rights legislation, he's making some adjustments on that. And he was asked the same question: what is a woman? And he could not even, as he's crafting this legislation for women, he can't even define what a woman is. If you can't define your terms, how can you do anything with anything? Here's the video. And going up a bit north to Canada, they're, like I showed earlier, they're kind of a few steps ahead of us, but we're catching up very quickly. They have these people who, no offense, they kind of look like a circus. It looked like something from Idiocracy. I'll let the video speak for itself. Don't want to say too much. I don't want to be rude, but it does not look good. Essentially, it's a bunch of people standing up saying, "We are not gonna stand here any longer and do nothing. We want people to be arrested for being mean to us and only us."
The topic that brings us here is deadly serious. The rise of hate and violence facing the 2S LGBTQI+ communities, including the drag artists, happening across Ontario and right in the nation has been alarming. The proposed legislation does two things, and I will go through them. Firstly, it enables the Attorney General to create a 2S LGBTQI+ community safety zone to prohibit within 100 meters of the property any homophobic, transphobic act of intimidation, threat, offensive threats, offensive remarks, protest, disturbance, and distribution of hate propaganda within the meaning of the criminal code. It also comes with it a penalty of $25,000 if prosecuted successfully.
And the last thing I wanted to discuss here was a story. It kind of gets more into the culture. It kind of blends a bit into the legal side of this whole almost precarious predicament that we're in. Now, so this article heads, "Female teacher fired, forced to apologize after saying 'good afternoon, girls' to students." All right, so does that seem so horrible? Saying "good afternoon, girls" to a group of girls. But apparently, because all of them may not identify as what they actually are, she was fired from her job. Can you imagine explaining that to your next employer? "Okay, let's see here. Looks like you're fired from your last position. Can you explain what was going on there? Oh, yeah, I came into the room. I said a typical gesture. I said a simple pleasantry. Oh, what was that? What was that simple pleasantry that you addressed to your classroom students? Well, I called them girls. Oh, how can you do that? Don't you understand that that is the worst thing that anybody can do? You should be fined and jailed, if not something more extreme than that, because you yourself are a extreme person. All right, well, that's what I have for right now. I'm gonna click my papers together just to symbolize that I am done for this video for today. Hopefully you learned something, and hopefully you have something to talk about with your friends and whoever else, and just let them know what's going on. I mean, it's really not, it's kind of simple. Men are women, or men are men and women are women on a cellular level. And I mean, people can do what they want, especially when they're older. If they want to wear a dress or act like a woman or act like a man, that's fine. People aren't really saying, people might advise against it, but if people do that, people do things. People understand that people are going to do things that you or whoever else disagree with, and there's not going to be any stopping that. You should not worry about what you cannot control. But when it comes to the children, which is largely what this issue is about, you need to let the parents make the decision. And when the parents make a crazy decision that abuse the children, that's when the government should step in. That's when society should step in and say, no, you are not allowed to do this. This is a serious, permanent thing for the children. And it's something that we cannot allow you to do this. Well, that's what I have for today. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. This is the Agency of Influence.